Leadership is a privilege to better the lives of others. It is not an opportunity to satisfy personal greed. Mai Kibaki said that once. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast, episode number 20, Exercising Political Leadership, with my guest, Mark Gerretson. Hey everybody, it's the host and founder of the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast, Scott McCarthy, here with episode number 20. Yep, that's right, 20. I can't believe going on a year ago now that when I started this podcast, what we'd be up to, episode 20. But here we are, nonetheless, and I think I got a pretty cool show for you today. I am actually going to bring you behind the scenes and talk to a political leader, a local political leader at that, for myself, which is pretty neat. Not something you get to do every day, and I was pretty humbled when MP Member of Parliament Mark Gerretson agreed to do this interview with me. So it's really neat. But before I dive into it, of course, I got a few things I'd like to go over with everyone right now. And the first thing is, of course, I'd like to welcome all the new listeners out there. The podcast is definitely growing every episode, and all you listeners out there, if this is your first or second time listening to the podcast, third, fourth, whatever, I definitely like to welcome you to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast. What the goal of this podcast is just to simply expand your leadership knowledge and horizons through just very basic and practical tips on how to be a better leader and better follower as well. If it's not your first or second or third time listening, but multiple times, welcome back to the show. Obviously, you enjoy it, and I definitely enjoy putting the show on for you. A couple of things I'd like to bring to your attention before we dive into the episode today. And the first one being the Moving Forward Leadership website. And on there, it's going to have all the resources available to you. So I'm not going to go down through everything. My Twitter handle, the newsletter, of course, my monthly newsletter, Facebook page, etc. But I will just highlight the website has all that information on there, so you can just feel free to go there, and that's where you can sign up to all those things if you want to keep in touch and keep track of what's going on here with the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast. The one thing I definitely want to highlight is the Moving Forward Leadership group, okay? And again, you can find that at facebook.com/groups/Moving Forward Leadership. And the group is there to build a mastermind, okay? And I'll be chatting with the folks in the group, or by the time you listen to this, I will have chatted with the folks in the group and explained to them what I mean by a mastermind. A mastermind is basically when two or more people come together to work on problems. More people working on a problem, the better it is. So the group is there for you to come forth and pose your leadership questions, and others help give you advice. It's a community for learning. And in there, I always go ahead and invite the guests from the podcast, so you get access to them as well. So you'll find John Conrad in there. You will find Tyrone Matheson. You'll find Brent Kelly, and so on and so forth. Almost all the guests of the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast have joined this group, and we are developing a leadership mastermind. Now, the big difference between my leadership group and others' group out there on the web is that generally others charge you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to get access. This is a Facebook group. I'm not charging a thing for you to get access. So, again, swing by facebook.com/groups/Moving Forward Leadership and join the conversation. Join the mastermind, and again, help you develop more as a leader. The last little thing I'd like to talk about before we dive into the episode today is leaving a review on iTunes or Google Play Music or Stitcher or however you're listening to this. And before actually you even leave a review, what I need you to do is go and subscribe. Because you know what? You don't want to miss another episode of this. Everything is built on each other. All the episodes are linked, okay? So the more you listen, the better it is for you. And the more that people go ahead and give me a rating on these different programs, the better it is for everybody else, because more people will then learn about the podcast and get involved and listen and download And that just means I get to reach more people and help more people, which is really all I'm here for, okay? So think about that. If please, it only takes 30 seconds. Go subscribe, and while you're subscribing, leave a rating and a review for the podcast, because it is really, good as gold for me as a podcaster. So that's pretty much all I want to hit on today. I don't want to bore you with too much of marketing per se. So today's episode, I got to have an interview with Mark Gerretson. Mark Gerretson is the Member of Parliament for Kingston and the Thousand Islands. My Member of Parliament. And the one thing I want to definitely stress on here today is we do not talk politics. Despite what I've been saying, we do not talk about politics. We talk about what it means to be a political leader. And by what I mean by that is, as a member of parliament, or he used to be the city mayor in Kingston, you are a political leader. You're a local leader who exercises leadership through political means. Therefore, what does that mean to the average person, or what does that mean to him as a leader? That's the type of things we talk about. We do not talk about political philosophies. We don't talk about current issues. We don't talk about anything. All we talk about is exercising leadership through the political means, which is really neat because you actually don't get this type of talk with politicians ever, really. Generally, it's about what their beliefs are on current issues or what they're trying to do and keep in office, yada, yada, yada. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my interview with Member of Parliament, Mark Gerretson. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Moving Forward podcast. I'm here with Member of Parliament, Mark Gerretson, today. Mark, thank you for agreeing to come out and talk to us on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Actually, we'll point out one interesting fact. You were my first face-to-face interview on the show.
Wow, I'm honored. Well, that's great. Thank you.
All right. So, I'm going to dive in here, and I guess the first question I have for you today is, what led you down the leadership road? So, from being mayor of City of Kingston and now moving up to the federal politic world, I guess, the whole background of why you went down that avenue for your life.
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked that because a lot of people naturally assume that because my father had been in politics, I witnessed that and knew from a young age that that's what I wanted to be in, that's what I wanted to do, and it was never an aspiration of mine. Actually, when I was younger and even into my 20s, I never thought that I would get involved in a leadership role that I'm in. I wanted to be an engineer when I was younger. I wanted to make things and build things, and that was one of my big passions. But what happened was, as I started to get into my later 20s and early 30s, I would talk to people in the community and hear what was going on in the community. I had a good friend of mine that worked for the city at the time, and I'd hear about things that were happening in the city government and the way that people were being treated, and I started to formulate these opinions on it, and we used to, my friend and I, get in these heated discussions about what was right and what was wrong, and finally one day somebody said to me, you should run for city council, and I thought, hey, yeah, I got a lot of opinions on these issues. Maybe I should put them to the test and see if other people think that my opinions are right. And I'll tell you, the two most surprised people when I decided to go down this road were my parents. They were floored because I had never expressed an interest in it and never thought that I would ever want to do something like this. But that's how I ended up running for city council. And when I was on city council, I really enjoyed the work and seeing how, being in that position, you can make a positive impact on so many lives. Like you can change something or build something in the community or change a policy in the community based on feedback that you're getting from people and help to formulate, better ways of making our city work. And then people encouraged me when the current mayor decided he wasn't going to run again, encouraged me to run for mayor, which I did. And then I was mayor for 4 years in Kingston, and an opportunity came along to run for the federal government, and I took that opportunity because I saw it as another way to, continue to do that work that I was doing locally, but more on a national scale. And that's the greatest sense of pride that I get out of the job is how you can take these ideas and turn them into bigger, to have a bigger impact on a greater number of people, and it's very rewarding for me when I get to see that at the end of the day.
So I guess you kind of still did actually build things about your aspiring and your engineering dream, I would say, but it's just in a different manner, right?
Yeah, exactly. There are big differences between, more of local government and federal government, and how your leadership roles kind of work on both. And I've had very, very different opportunities at the different levels to continue to do that stuff that you're talking about, which is build in different ways.
So I guess that kind of actually, your last statement there dovetails right into what would be my next question. Could you get into some of the specifics of those differences between the local level and the federal level?
Yeah. I think I would say that the major thing, and whenever I'm talking to people about this is kind of the example I use, which is that at the local level, I mean, you will never be able to more directly impact the lives of your neighbors than being involved in your municipal council or your municipal government and how it works. When you take some money, taxpayer money, and build a park, you get to see a tangible result at the end of the day. There's a park there. When you change, the layout of a neighborhood through planning, through city planning, you see tangible impacts at the end of the day. And the major difference between that and the federal level is that what you do at the federal level is so much more policy creation, and quite often those policies don't translate into actual on the ground impacting your neighbors, so to speak, for many years, and it's hard to measure those impacts and those changes. Whereas at the local level, it's so much easier to measure them because you see tangible results in relatively short order. So, I mean, that would be the one big difference. And then, of course, there's the difference in the way that the actual political systems work. Being a leader in the municipal government, at least in Ontario, the way that it works is everybody is independent. You're your own leader, so to speak. You make your own decisions. You say what you want. You have your own autonomy to do as you please, so to speak. And you truly are a leader, quote unquote. When you are in the federal government or provincial government, for that matter, because of the political system where we have political parties, you're aligning yourselves with other people who believe in the same goals or same values that you do. But what that means is that you have to find consensus amongst a group of people on what your position will be on something, as opposed to being able to have that autonomy and say, I feel this way, this is the way that I'm going to move forward on this, which I could do at the municipal level, but at the federal level it's a little more challenging because you have to work with other people to find consensus before you decide this is how we'll move forward on this. And different people that come from different parts of the country that have different interests. The interests on the West Coast are very much different than the interests on the East Coast, or the eastern coast of Lake Ontario, where we are. So, I mean, it's, there are differences, there are challenges, there are pros and cons to both. But, I mean, having direct impact on people's lives, that's at the municipal level, in my opinion.
Would it be fair to think that you got some of your best fulfillment at the municipal levels, being able to see that, tangible results, vice the policy changes that you're involved in?
It's really tough to say municipally was so much better than federally, because I've also had the opportunity to do some great things in the last 2 years at the federal level that that I see as having an impact on many Canadians' lives. So it's just the degree to the tangibility of what you can actually hold on to at the end of the day. That's what's different.
Yeah, it's just different, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Just change things up. Well, you kind of hinted at it. Could you, just reflect on some of the challenges that you've faced in your time, regardless if it's municipal or federal, and how you've managed to get through them?
Yeah, I think, in all fairness, I don't think that I I can say I did a good job of being a leader, either at the municipal or federal level, if I didn't recognize some of the mistakes that I made along the way. And I mean, I've always been one of these types of people that lives and learns. I do things, I realize that it was good or perhaps not good, and then I go back and I try to, do a better job next time. And I think that, one of the things that I found as a challenger, in particular when I was mayor, was the relationship that the city had with Queen's University, and in particular my own personal relationship that I had with Queen's University. In hindsight, I mean, I realize that there are many ways that I could have handled that relationship different. That probably would have been in the better interest of all Kingstonians, and that would be one of the challenges that I had, and that I have kind of turned into a learning experience. And that was at the municipal level. At the federal level, I mean, equally, one of the challenges that I continued to face, and it goes back to what I talked about previously, was finding the right avenue to express your position on issues in a way that is respectful of the democratic process that we have in Canada. And from time to time, that can be difficult to do, especially when you belong to a political party.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah.
So, how about the other side of the coin, though? Can you reflect on a couple of successes that you've come across in the past number of years?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll start with a federal example, and this is one of the things that has been so rewarding to me. When I was first elected, I was one of the first people to have the opportunity to bring forward a private member's bill in the House of Commons. And a private member's bill is the order in which people are selected is literally done on lottery. And so I was one of the people at the top of the list. And I had to put together a bill that I would bring into the House. And what I ended up bringing forward was an example of an individual in our riding that had a problem, but her problem was shared by many people throughout the country. And I was able to take her problem, turn it into a bill to change the way that things work so that many people throughout the country can be impacted by it. And the bill specifically is with respect to women who work in hazardous jobs and what it means for them when they become pregnant. So the example was a local individual who worked at Metalcraft Marine in Kingston. She was a welder there. When she became pregnant, her doctor told her that she could no longer continue welding because it wasn't good for the health of her unborn child. And so she basically had no income because the way that our employment insurance system is set up is you can't start to take employment insurance until you reach a certain stage in your pregnancy. So she had no income and literally had to end up moving in with friends and family in order to support herself. This is all while she's pregnant because she couldn't work at her career job. And so what the bill sought to do was to change part of the Employment Insurance Act to make it so that people in her situation, whether you're a welder or an X-ray technician or a carpenter or a plumber, and you are in that position, that employment insurance can kick in earlier for you. And then the other and perhaps more important part of the bill was that we request that the federal government look specifically at the maternity assistance program for individuals throughout the country, and how can we change it so that it better reflects the labor market of today and individuals who want to be in hazardous work employment and also want to have a family. And the way that this impacted women throughout the country is that there are what we found is that there are a surprising number of women who choose not to go into certain professions because they are worried about what it means if they also want to have a family, and what that impact might be if they need to go on maternity leave. So it was extremely rewarding in that it was the opportunity to bring forward this local constituents' concern and turn it into a bill that had impact on and will continue to have impact on women throughout the country.
That's actually really great. That's just looking at identifying a problem, which is one, but actually affects many, and then turning a solution that both solves this lady's problem, but actually future problems down the road. So no, that's a core value of leadership right there for sure. Do you have another example you'd like to share?
Probably
not one as good
as that. And that's the most recent one too in this line of work that I'm in now. But previously as mayor, I mean, there were so many examples of what we were able to accomplish. But I mean, as mayor, I probably had the opportunity to be really in that role of leadership more. And I'll say that I always, like I said earlier, learn through kind of trial and error and grow into the position. And I think that one of the most important things that somebody can do when they're in a position of leadership, in particular when I was mayor, for my example, is make sure that you're always looking at, I tried this and it had this kind of an impact. And it didn't unite us. It made, created divisions, and it made it more difficult to get something done. So next time maybe I can do it this way. And one of the things that we were able to continually do was keep our tax rate in the city of Kingston low. And as a matter of fact, it was the lowest. We continued to keep the lowest tax rate since the city amalgamated in 1998, while at the same time not changing any of the services in the city. And so it was tough to do that because you have to make decisions as to what you're going to do, and a lot of people always think, okay, well, the only way you can do that is either lower tax or increase taxes or lower services. That's the only way you can keep the tax rate down. But you can also look for creative solutions. So one of the things that we did in the city was change all the street lights to LED light bulbs. Previous to that, they weren't. And we saved the city about $450,000 a year in electricity costs. Wow. And that was an opportunity then to say, okay, we can lower the tax rate and continue to provide all the services we are. So there are other ways to do things. And when people say to you all the time, well, you either have to increase taxes or decrease services, that people have to challenge that. And I believe that people in leadership roles need to challenge when people tell them stuff like that, and to say, well, hold on, what are you sure there's not another way of doing this? Can we do something else? And this example of changing light bulbs, we spent some money up front, but it's going to save money for 15, 20 years in the long term.
Yeah, so, for sure.
And there's so many more other examples that you can, of things you can do like that. And that really is, probably, and those are the things that, as somebody, at least that was in my position, I really enjoyed finding, with obviously the help of others, those solutions. Because, once you discover it, okay, we can do this, we can do something slightly differently, then you really feel like you're accomplishing something.
Yeah, the status quo is definitely like something that's people generally tend to gravitate towards.
Yeah.
For your example, either lower taxes or raise taxes or reduce services is basically like the status quo. But that's easy because that's something we know. But we got to find and work through and finding new solutions, because end of the day, it's either continue to evolve or things start falling apart. So,
absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So. Political leadership is definitely different than being a leader in the business community or being a military leader or whatever. What do you think are some of the key differences in political role that vices the rest in a leadership role?
That's a good one. Politics has a lot to do with perception and how people are interpreting what's going on. Mm-hmm. When a leader makes a decision in the business community, usually they're making a decision that's based on, this is in the best interest of my business, this is going to affect the bottom line this way, or this will affect staff morale this way, or this will affect my ability to grow the business in this regard. And I'm not trying to say that the decisions are all driven by bottom line, because they're not. They're driven by a set of measurables, so to speak, or a set of objectives And the one objective that's different in the political sphere is, how does this affect the general population, and how does the general population interpret and what's their perception of what's going on and what we're doing? I'm not saying that that's always a good thing, because sometimes that pursuit of appeasing the perception can be a detriment to politics. If politicians continually and only ever worry about what does the public perceive about this, they're going to very easily lose sight of what's actually important, and how do we really change lives and make people's lives better. But it is something that's always there, because politicians will always think, whether they admit it or not, how will this impact me in the next election? And what's the short-term gain on this? And so you have to find the right place between recognizing recognizing the fact that exists, and making people's lives better and making decisions that genuinely help people. And it's tough to do it. It's tough to find a place between those two realms, so to speak, to walk down and to make those decisions. But I think that would be the main difference. In the business community, you're driven by a whole different set of objectives, and although a lot of them relate to the political world, there is this other element of perception and how people will perceive what you're doing, and just because it's right, will people like it, and if it's not the best, and if it's not going to be what people like, but it is the best thing to do, how do I relay that to people? That's really important, and it's important to walk that line, and to be able to have that communication with the public.
Sometimes the best solution isn't necessarily the most palatable one, eh?
Exactly. Yeah.
Unfortunately, for sure. Is there any political leadership myth that you would like to dispel? If you
Political leadership myth.
You kind of hit at one there, in that politicians just care about the next election, which you could almost understand, because it's job security, right? You're trying to keep your job.
Well, it's no different than an employee wanting to appease their boss so that they don't get fired, right? I mean, the politician is just trying to appease their boss, which are the people, so they don't get fired. So, it's similar, but I don't know, myths. I think that there are a lot of myths that pop up from time to time about politicians. Right off the bat, the one that comes to mind is that all politicians are in it for their own, and slimy, and all those other things that come greasy, yeah. But I'll tell you, I'm surrounded by some people that I know are there for the right reasons, that are there because they believe in making positive change for the people that they represent, and that's probably the most inspiring thing, not just for other politicians, but for individuals and for young people that come to Parliament Hill, and they get to see these people being so passionate about something because they genuinely believe in it. There's nothing quite as rewarding as that.
Yeah, I think you've taken care of it yourself with all the work you've been doing with the ongoing Phoenix issues, the pay system issues. So
yeah,
I don't think you really got that slimy in for yourself.
I guess it depends who you ask.
That goes for anybody.
Yeah.
A couple last questions going down here. If someone was listening to this podcast and they're thinking about going into the whole political world, whether that's here in Ontario, Canada, or U.S. abroad, what would be some advice you would give them?
The advice that I would give would be very similar to how I got into politics, which is just start by talking to people about the issues that are going on. And it's one thing to watch the news all the time and to just be receiving everything that you hear, whether it's on Facebook or on TV or whatever it is, but to actually sit down with people and talk to people and hear, what their opinion, and say, oh, can you believe that so-and-so said this the other day? I don't want to use names, but so-and-so said this the other day, and then hear what they have to say. Because what I have found very interesting is quite often what I'm thinking about something is not what other people are thinking about. So it's always interesting to hear, other people's position on things. And really that's what politics is about taking all these different positions that are out there and figuring out how you form consensus out of that and build a path forward. Mm-hmm. So my advice would be get involved. Like, get involved in whether it means sitting in and watching a council meeting, whether it means running for a school board trustee, whether it means getting involved in a political party, whichever one is irrelevant, but just getting involved and becoming part of the discussion and what's going on, and informing yourselves and knowing what the issues are, and the rest kind of takes itself from there. Mm-hmm. Like if you really want to run for city council, you'll once you start doing that and once you start talking to other people, that part will come very easily.
That's great. So I got one last question that I throw at all my guests that I don't prepare for them. Yeah. In your opinion, what makes a great leader?
In my opinion, what makes a great leader? Humility. Being humble and being able to accept the fact that your position is not always going to be the right position. Realizing that you have to listen to other people and you have to take the input from other people in order to translate that into, helping you formulate your own opinions on things. If you go into politics or if you go into any leadership role and you think, I got all the answers and I got this, I can tell everybody what to do, you will fail so incredibly quickly. But if you go in with the concept that you need to learn from others and that showing people that you're willing to listen to what they have to say, you will be so much further better off.
Yeah. Apple day keeps the doctor away, and a slice of humility pie keeps everybody happy, right?
There you go.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast with Member Parleton Mark Gerretson. Mark, I appreciate taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you're a busy man. At least it was summer recess for Parliament right now.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot. I really appreciated the conversation.
If anybody wants to reach out to you, how can they go ahead and get a hold to you?
Facebook. Just put my name in Facebook, Mark Gerretson, or my office on Princess Street, 841 Princess Street, or email, Google me, and you'll find me real quick.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to find for sure. Anyway, thank you again for your time.
Thanks.
Hey, everybody. Now, wasn't that a pretty neat show? Like, seriously, how often do you actually get a chance to listen to that type of interview with a politician? I've personally never ever heard of one before. So again, MP Gerretson, if you listen to this podcast, thank you again for taking the time out of your busy schedule to help me and help all the listeners out there to the Moving Forward Leadership Podcast on bettering themselves of being leaders, as well as learning what it means to be a political leader. A couple key takeaways here that I'd like to highlight for you guys. And that is, the first one is, one change for one person helped them many. And he heard it in his example there in talking about the the private bill which he pushed forward, okay? Trying to make one change which was brought about from one person, but in reality it's going to help thousands, if not millions, of women across the country. And that's something as leaders you need to look at. You can look at helping one individual person with their individual circumstance, or you can seize the opportunity to say, hey, there are more people who are going to be in this person's shoes. Why don't I do a change which is not just helping the individual, but going much bigger, and beyond that individual and helping the masses out there? I thought that was really neat. The next key takeaway which I had was building for the better. And every day, leaders strive to make themselves better, make their organizations better, make their people better, all right? And you can hear that, and that truly is one of the goals of being a political leader, is building for the better. So I thought that was great as well. Again, I'd like to thank Mr. MP Gerretson for taking his time out of his busy schedule to sit down and go through this interview with me. Thanks to you for listening. And again, as I talked about at the intro of it, if you truly enjoy this show, please take some time to leave a review and a rating. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Moving Forward Leadership Podcast. Thank you for your support through the past 19, 20 episodes of the show, and I definitely look forward to all of the episodes to come. Until next time, remember, keep pushing, keep trying, keep moving forward. Take care now.